Right behind you.
Strange.
Vice Mayor Strange, you'll address her properly.
You can kiss my foot.
Mr. Rickard, you're out of order.
FBI, we are asking you to investigate this council. Please look into this council, how they award contracts, the bid process, how they use their positions to benefit their friends and themselves, how they use their positions to attack residents and critics and neighbors and business competition. FBI, will you please look into this?
And I welcome the FBI here. If you notice, Mr. Thompson with his plea for the FBI and his watchdog group, this city runs the cleanest in this whole county. I guarantee
He was served a federal subpoena this morning.
Did receive a subpoena this morning, and we're going to cooperate 100% with the subpoena. And
most of you who were involved up here, you gaslighted me. You tried to say I was crazy. And now we know that that's not true. And there's a lot of other issues I've been asking about as well.
Ooh, big day today. There is a brand new motion filed by Lynn Haven Defendant and developer James Finch in the Lynn Haven corruption case. And it is a doozy. And it names names. I mean, this motion is telling the court, yeah, look, we know that we have trial set for November 28th. But we can't defend ourselves if we don't have all of the evidence that the judge, that you, Your Honor, has told the prosecutors and the investigators that they have to turn over. This evidence that could be exculpatory, which is known as Brady material, all right, from a previous case in case law. So when you hear Brady material tonight, what that means is evidence that could help the defense. And the judge said, gosh, way back in like February, that the prosecutors had to turn it all over. They haven't been turning it over. And the defense in this motion is going to mention that in detail. They're also going to show the reason for this motion, the reason it's necessary for the defense to file this motion is because there's still evidence, they say, that has not been turned over. How do they know that? Well, because last month there was an FBI affidavit. It was the search warrant affidavit. It's what the FBI told a judge more than a year ago about suspected crimes. And the reason they needed to do a search warrant on GAC contractors last year. Your Honor, we need to do that because we suspect George Gaynor has committed crime. It mentioned Gaynor, Alan Bentz. It mentioned Bill Husfeld. It mentioned Joel Schubert, the assistant county manager. And it contradicted many of the charges against the Lynn Haven defendants. It seems like there was another big giant thing going on that the authorities know about. But see, that search warrant affidavit was sealed. The FBI, the prosecutors, the sheriff's office, the state attorney's office, none of them knew that this was going to come out. But it was unsealed, and the press got a hold of it. We got a hold of it. And we posted it. And we talked about it. I talked about it in great detail last month. And then prosecutors said, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be out. And they asked the judge, can you reseal that, please? Can you put the toothpaste back in the tube? Can you send the horses back in the barn and pretend they didn't get out? And a judge did. But it's out. It's published. But in that information, the defense said, holy shnikes, just like that. They said, holy shnikes, look, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that you guys never gave us. Your Honor, look, there's a whole bunch of stuff that they never gave us. So this whole case needs to be thrown out. And it might be. You see, Judge Walker, federal Judge Walker, has already told the prosecutors that the court is losing its patience. Here, let me read to you. Let me share with you this. All right, let me share with you the post that I made. All right, look at this. Bombshell motion. Lynn Haven defendants point to more prosecutorial misconduct. Developer James Finch filed a motion today demanding that prosecutors explain why the court should not dismiss the entire case, as prosecutors continue to withhold key evidence well after the judge's deadline. The motion also demands that prosecutors turn it over immediately. Federal Judge Mark Walker has already warned prosecutors whose conduct has been deemed unprofessional, haphazard, and reckless that the court was losing its patience and said that he could be forced to throw out the entire case. Today's motion asks the judge to do just that. Last month, the FBI search warrant affidavit that led to the raid of GAC contractors last year was inadvertently unsealed. Defendants say that the affidavit revealed evidence that contradict their charges and show that the real culprits include the owners of GAC contractors, Lynn Haven city engineer Chris Forehand, and national disaster contractor Ashbridge LLC. Defendants also outline how prosecutors continue to withhold witness statements and impermissibly control evidence that they were entitled to have long ago. What you're going to see, because I'm going to read to you the entire motion, what you're going to see is unbelievable. You may want to share this one because this is just out. Nobody's shown you this before. This is just released, just filed. I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read all of it. 23 pages of content here. You may want to share this. You may want to tag your friends. But this information is information that you're certainly going to want to see. And I'm going to read it to you word for word right after this.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
When your life is on the line, hire the lawyer who lives in our community, works in our community, and worships in our community. I'm El Saulene, your Panama City Beach lawyer. 850-215-0628.
All right. Is that big enough? Can you see that, or shall I? I'll do it this way so you can read it with me. All right. This is filed today. Defendant Finch's redacted motion for order to show cause and third motion to compel. Defendant Finch respectfully moves for an order to show cause why this should not be dismissed, why this case should not be dismissed due to the government's continued repeat failures to comply with its Brady obligations. Again, that is to turn over information that could lead, that could, I'll just call it exculpatory evidence, all right? Evidence that could show that they're not guilty as charged. Anytime I say Brady obligations or Brady material, under the court's discovery order. Alternatively, Finch moves for appropriate sanctions, along with an order compelling the government to produce materials stating, for over 2 years, there has been a wholesale failure on the part of the government to comply with the letter and spirit of the court's orders and case law. All right, I'll read to you the footnotes that are not, two just kind of legal redundancies, okay? Requiring the disclosure of Brady, Giglio, and Knapp information to the defense. Unfortunately, that deliberate disregard for the court's orders and the law continues as demonstrated in this motion to compel and motion for order to show cause. Defendant Finch repeatedly has sought legally required discovery as mandated by the court's order, the local rules, and established case law. We have attempted to resolve these matters without court intervention. Unfortunately, we again must burden the court with requests that the government comply with the law. 1. History of late and withheld Brady material. On March 18, 2021, the court entered a discovery order confirming the government's duty to disclose all exculpatory evidence as required by Brady and its progeny without a request, quote, without a request by Finch. On March 24, Finch requested general and specific discovery pursuant to the March 18 discovery order, including all information or material within the scope of Brady, Giglio, and Nape. On March 31st, the government provided a written response to Finch's request for the discovery. The government represented that, quote, the United States does not have information or material at this time which may be favorable to the defendants on the issues of guilt or punishment. The government also took the position that the defense discovery requests may include information to which the defense is not entitled, and information that may or may not exist. Quote, finally, if your discovery letter includes requests for information to which you are not entitled or to the pretrial order of the court, please be advised that the failure of the United States to respond directly to those requests not encompassed by the federal discovery rules should not be construed as any representation as to the non-existence of any requested information. You see why you need lawyers? Because only lawyers understand each other. And then half the time they don't. On May 14, Finch responded seeking specific clarification, as to the information that may or may not exist. We also identified several individuals. Here's where it's going to get spicy tonight. And here's why I encourage you to share and tag your friends so that they see what's in this motion. Remember, this is a motion. This is what the defense is alleging. This doesn't mean it's true, but it damn well better be true to the best of the defense's knowledge, because they can't turn over stuff that they don't have evidence of. They can't sit there and lie to the judge to try to get out of trouble. So what I'm saying is, don't look at this and say what you hear shows that Chris Forehand, for example, is a crook. It doesn't show that. But they can't put it in here if they don't have evidence suggesting or showing that he did what they claim he did, or they're in big trouble with the judge. And this is probably only the beginning of the stuff you're going to hear and learn about at the trial. All right, so on we go here. We also identified several individuals who were interviewed by state and federal agents requesting those reports. All stuff that the defense should have. Many of these witnesses were involved in the Lynn Haven contracting process, participated in city government, or were contextually identified in the indictment and superseding indictment. This information was not provided by the government in its initial discovery phase. Now I'm going to read you some footnotes. The government's April 1st production included witness statements from only defendant Margot Anderson, Adam Albritton, Finch, and former Lynn Haven City Commissioner Antonius Barnes. The July 19, 2021 production included 53 reports of witness statements, nearly all of which were prepared and available before the superseding indictment. Much of the information that was provided contained classic Brady, Giglio, and Nape material. Witness statements contradicted each other. Many of the reports contradicted fundamental theories of specific allegations in the indictment. All right, they're going to get into that here. Even after the defense specifically identified Brady material, the material was not willingly produced. Instead, the government pressed for an all-encompassing protective order on the basis that the defendants were improperly disclosing discovery material. When challenged to support this allegation, the government altered its argument, requesting the court enter an overly restrictive protective order without precedent or justifiable cause. It was a clear attempt to control defense's access to materials to which the government was entitled, to which the defense was entitled, rather. This court rejected the government's overreach, summarily denying the government's attempt to unfairly restrict our review of discovery, rejecting the government's request to retroactively impose restrictions on documents it had already produced, and holding that the provision limiting defendants to reviewing witness material at their counsel's office is overly restrictive. After repeated requests by the defense, on July 19 of last year, the government's second wave of discovery was produced well after the deadlines. Well after the deadlines had passed. This production demonstrated that the government's March 31st, 2021 written representation that it was not in possession of additional Brady material was manifestly untrue. First motion to compel. This is a history of the case here. During the time the government was supposed to be repairing the legal and factual flaws in the superseding indictment, Finch's counsel continued to try and resolve, without court intervention, discovery disputes relating to Brady issues, sealed pleadings, and redacted 302s. 302s are the FBI notes, the official notes, when they interview witnesses or targets. Unsuccessful in our attempts, say the defense, on October 22 of last year, Finch was forced to file his first motion to compel the production of redacted 302s and sealed pleadings. Finch's motion detailed a history of the government's discovery violations, including the government's misrepresentation on March 31st of last year that it was not in possession of additional Brady material. The government kept saying, we don't have material that could help the defense. But yet it continued to have it. On November 9 of last year, the court granted Finch's motion to compel over the government's objection and express representation that the redacted material was not Brady material. It couldn't help the defense, they said. The unredacted material was produced on November 12. A review of that unredacted material was both startling and disturbing, unequivocally demonstrating that the government's possession of no Brady material were false. On November 16 of last year, the government suggested that its decision to suppress this critical information was driven by its lack of confidence in our ability to control Finch. The government further criticized the court. So the prosecutors criticized the judge, they say, stating that the court directed production without reviewing the redacted material or making a determination if the material is Brady. Second motion to compel. Armed with these unredacted revelations and evidence that the government solicited false testimony, the defense filed a motion to dismiss the second superseding indictment, which alternatively requested production of all grand jury transcripts, agents' notes, and reports. In response, the government characterized the redacted statements, which originated from the government's own cooperating witnesses, as not Brady. The government's position that such information was not Brady, couldn't help the defense, was both legally and factually unsupportable. The court ordered immediate production of all grand jury transcripts, agent reports, and notes by March 1st of this year, and set the matter for an evidentiary hearing. Now, understand, this is where the story is incredible. Less than 1% of all defendants ever see the transcripts of what they told the grand jury to get the indictment. Less than 1%. It's my contention, after what I've learned, that every defendant should get the transcripts of what prosecutors or investigators told a grand jury in order to indict you. Every defendant should see that. Doesn't mean that you should know the names of the grand jurors. Absolutely not. That's secret. Here's an example, they say. For example, the suppressed material contained direct evidence of law enforcement corruption, false testimony before the grand jury, and factual evidence of innocence. Government witness Michael White and Mickey White revealing substantial misconduct by government witnesses. The suppressed reports directly implicated co-case agent Major Jimmy Stanford of the Bay County Sheriff's Office in serious criminal conduct, much of which occurred while investigating this very case. Unfortunately, the government utterly failed to comply with this court order of production as well. Instead, it disregarded the court's instructions in the most flagrant fashion. Rather than complying or seeking an extension, the government made 7 late productions between March 4th and March 31st. 1 late production during the evidentiary hearing. 3 late productions after the evidentiary hearing's conclusion. As presented during the 3-day evidentiary hearing and defendant's post-hearing briefing, the government's multiple March 1st through April 13th late productions contained significant Brady material. Each late production constituted a violation of this court's orders. In the June 13th order, the court rejected several of the government's arguments and characterizations of the withheld materials and described the government's conduct as falling well short of best practices. That's what the judge said. Let's go to this footnote. For example, multiple interview reports of Samantha Lind, which were withheld, were extraordinarily disturbing because they described the manufacturing of evidence against Anderson. Manufacturing of evidence. Likewise, the FBI agent hid his notes from an interview with Denise Dee Rowan with counsel present that directly contradicted the testimony of the government's cooperating witnesses, Michael White and Chris Forehand. The court later rejected the government's insinuation that some of the late produced material was not Brady simply because it believed the defendants are guilty, concluding the government's position was nonsense. Ultimately, the court declined to conclude that the government acted in bad faith or the defendants were sufficiently prejudiced to warrant dismissal. So the first time that the defendant said, Your Honor, look, the judge said, this is not enough for me to throw the whole thing out. You remember that? A few months back, the judge said he had to give lesser sanctions. So when he called the prosecution and the investigators reckless. So he's done that. He's done the lesser sanctions. And here the defense is back today. All right, back to this. But the government was ordered to file a notice stating to the best of its knowledge, this is what the judge made him do. You better tell us that you've turned it all over. And the government said, to the best of our knowledge, we have. All outstanding reports have been produced. On July 1st of this year, the government submitted notice that it had fully complied with the court's February order. We've turned it all over, they said. The defense says we now know that this notice and the representation to the court were yet again untrue. And now we are here to the third motion to compel. On August 11th, the media reported on an unsealed warrant affidavit signed by former FBI agent, Special Agent Borghini, that was used to obtain and acquire 3 search warrants. This is what the FBI agent told a judge in order to raid GAC contractors. But nobody knew about this until it was inadvertently unsealed and we reported on it. Okay, so this is what they're talking about now, is what was in that? What did the FBI tell the judge? After the warrant documents were unsealed and widely reported on by the media, the government sought an order resealing the materials. Here's what the footnotes here. Prior to March of this year, GAC was co-owned by former Speaker of the Florida House, Alan Bentz, and Lynn Haven contractor Derwin White. GAC, along with GAC and Derwin White, along with Ashbrit. Ashbrit is a national disaster cleanup company. We're actively involved. Listen to this. We're actively involved in orchestrating. This is what the FBI told a judge. That Alan Bentz, Derwin White, Ashbrit were actively involved in orchestrating all post-Hurricane Michael debris disposal in Lynn Haven. The government's charging documents, of course, the ones that indicted Margot Anderson, would have one believe that Margot Anderson and James Finch were the wizards behind the curtain, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, including Finch being in Jacksonville recovering from a serious, debilitating stroke. Wow. Considering the court's orders and admonitions regarding the government's repeated failure to comply with its discovery obligations, it was disturbing to read the FBI agent's warrant affidavit, which clearly contained Brady and Giglio information that was not produced to defendants Finch and Anderson. Borghini's sworn statements within the warrant affidavit are factually inconsistent with the government's theories in this case. Underline that sentence. That sentence needs to be underlined. In addition, several statements directly contradict the FBI agent's testimony before the grand juries. We also believe that the affidavit would have constituted a statement of the witness that should have been produced consistent with Brady, Giglio, and the court's February 22nd order, as the FBI agent testified at the evidentiary hearing on the motions to dismiss. On August 26th of this year, we sought an explanation as to why the government failed to produce the warrant and the affidavit. So the defense asked the prosecutors, "Hey, why did you guys not turn that over to us when we asked you about it?" We also requested a copy of any and all materials obtained as a result of the FBI's August 5th search warrants of last year. Any and all documents relating to James Finch, Phoenix Construction, or entity owned by or controlled by James Finch and Phoenix Construction. Footnote says that the FBI agent was the only witness presented at each and every grand jury to secure the return of these complicated, convoluted indictments. Okay, so the FBI wanted from GAC everything having to do with Finch and any and all documents relating to Ashbrit. Remember, Ashbrit is the National Disaster Cleanup Company that was kicking back money according to these indictments, according to all of this stuff that we found, we've been talking about. He got a deal, a special deal, the FBI told the judge, with Ashbrit. In fact, here it is. On August 29th of this year, the government responded, "This is why we didn't give it to you. This is why we didn't tell you about that stuff." Let's go here first. Regarding, this is the FBI, this is the government now talking to the defense. Regarding materials seized at GAC, we have not completed our review of it. This is what they just said after a year. We have not completed our review of it, but we'll produce any material we identify as relevant, when we get around to it. We know the trial's coming in a couple of months, but, we haven't gotten around to it, is what the government said. In the meantime, you are welcome to inspect it at the FBI office in Panama City and copy any particular document you identify as relevant. We think this is necessary given what the court described, the government said what the court described as Mr. Finch's irresistible urge to share discovery materials in direct violation of the court's orders. We are happy to reconsider that procedure if you provide sufficient assurance that Mr. Finch has not otherwise violated this protective order. Whoa. So the government says, yeah, we got all that stuff we took out at GAC a year ago, but we haven't gone through it all yet, see? And besides that, the court says that James Finch has an irresistible urge to share discovery materials in direct violation of the court. All right, so now the defense is going to respond to that, and I'm going to share that with you. They're about to name names. This is about, you're not going to believe what I'm going to read you after this. Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan can make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at pcairrepair.com. All right, so the government says, look, we haven't gone through all that stuff. It's here. You guys can come look at it if you want to. And the court already said James Finch can't control his urges to share all this stuff. All right, so the defense says to the judge now, today, however, because the court previously rejected the government's prior attempts at limiting the review of discovery, Defendant Finch respectfully rejected the government's offer to review all documents at the FBI office in Panama City. We again asked the government to confirm whether the government is opposed or unopposed to providing the defendant with access to all the material seized pursuant to the GAC search warrant. We also asked the government to provide a copy of the order in which the government claimed the court found Finch to have an irresistible urge to share discovery materials in direct violation of the court's orders. Let's see what this footnote says. As further described herein, the FBI's receipts for property seized in case numbers, several case numbers, list a series of thumb drives, computers, phones, and other items. Although overly generic in their description, some items bear the description of material that is likely relevant to the allegations and circumstances surrounding the post-hurricane debris disposal, which is part of the count one conspiracy allegations regarding Finch's so-called business interests. All right. On September 6th of this year, the government responded, quote, as we said, the GAC search materials are available for your inspection and copying at FBI headquarters in Panama City. Should you choose to file a motion to compel production, which they just did today, by the way. Should you choose to file a motion to compel production in some other form, you may represent that we oppose that request for relief. So you're going to have to get the judge to tell us to do it, is what the government says. Notably, the government ignored Finch's request for and or refused to provide the order or document in which the government claimed the court made statements or findings about defendant Finch. I noticed the government is making a lot of claims about defendant Finch lately, and they want to see where they're getting this stuff from. On August 26th, we also informed the government that we had information and reason to believe that the FBI agent interviewed several witnesses or potential witnesses that did not generate an FBI. So in other words, the FBI agent did interviews but didn't formalize it in the FBI 302 note. We believe the information was not transcribed because it was exculpatory to defendants Finch and or Anderson, unfortunately, within weeks of the trial's beginning. We are once more in the untenable position of seeking court intervention in the production of court-ordered discovery. Specifically, the defense is seeking court-ordered discovery regarding all witnesses interviewed by the FBI and the Bay County Sheriff's Office in relation to this case and the search of GAC's properties. Let's see what this footnote says. The defense does not have possession of or access to any order containing this alleged quote from the court. In the event the government is quoting from a sealed ex parte pleading, defendant Finch respectfully requests that the pleading be produced. Ex parte means a discussion between the judge and the government where the defense was not included. Now that the government is quoted from it, though, Finch wants it, allegedly concluding that Finch has that irresistible urge we've been talking about. With the greatest deference to the court, the defense says we are simply skeptical that the court reached this conclusion, apparently ex parte, without adversarial due process. So here's the argument being made today by the defense, by defendant Finch. At the August 13th hearing last year on defense's motions to dismiss the superseding indictment, the court inquired about the number of conspiracies that were alleged in the indictment. Specifically, the court rightly questioned the government as to the identity of the hub or rim. If there's a conspiracy, there's a lot of parts, right? So the judge asked, who's the hub or the rim as it relates to the government's conspiracy theories? The limited and incomplete discovery paints a partial picture of answers to the court's questions. Most certainly, portions of the discovery also reveal who is not the hub, rim, or spokes to this alleged conspiracy. James Finch. The limited and incomplete discovery produced by the government in this case demonstrates that Derwin White was the hub of the conspiracies surrounding post-hurricane cleanup. Ashbrit, remember the national cleanup company, Ashbrit, is undoubtedly a spoke or rim as it agreed to allow White to direct and control the debris disposal in Lynn Haven. And Chris Forehand, with his connections and control of Tetra Tech, is also a spoke or rim to disprove the government's allegations against Finch and to prove the government's grossly inadequate, sloppy, and misleading investigation. We are requesting that the court compel production of the material seized from GAC in that it relates to the unindicted hub, spokes, and rim of corruption in Lynn Haven related to the post-Hurricane Michael debris disposal. A, GAC, Derwin White, and Ashbrit. GAC is a Florida corporation specializing in road, site work, and building construction in North Florida. Prior to its sale in March 2022 of this year, GAC was co-owned and operated by Derwin White, who is recently deceased. Crowder Gulf is another. There were two national hurricane cleanup companies that came here. Crowder Gulf and Ashbrit are two large national providers in the disaster response and recovery industry with pre-negotiated contracts within Bay County, including with the city of Lynn Haven. In response to Hurricane Michael, Lynn Haven and surrounding counties and municipalities activated Crowder Gulf and Ashbrit to perform post-hurricane services. According to the FBI affidavit in support of GAC search warrants last year, Derwin White contacted Crowder Gulf after Hurricane Michael, implying that he had connections in Lynn Haven, and asked if Crowder Gulf needed help. Derwin White stated that he was willing to assist Crowder Gulf if it would cut him in on a percentage of its revenues. This is what the FBI told a judge. This is not what the defense is claiming. It's what the FBI told a judge. And to facilitate debris disposal site. Crowder Gulf did not need Derwin White and had nothing to do with Derwin White or GAC. However, Ashbrit did partner with Derwin White and GAC. You're going to see a lot of redactions now because this comes from the sealed again affidavit that the FBI told the judge in order to perform a search warrant on GAC. Ashbrit used GAC as a subcontractor on many services and used GAC sites for debris management, reduction, and disposal. According to the FBI agent, 4 lines of redaction. Although you can see all this if you go to my previous story about it last month. This portion of the FBI agent's sworn statement is wholly inconsistent with the FBI agent's testimony before the grand juries to secure multiple indictments. That's what I was thinking. When I was reading that unsealed search warrant affidavit, I'm thinking, holy shnikes. This is all new. This is all new stuff. Why isn't if all this has happened, if the FBI knows about it, and if the sheriff's office knows about it, are they just that slow? Or is there something else going on? This portion of Borghini's sworn statement, okay, we said that. It is further directly inconsistent with the government's theory in this case. The government's theory in the case that Mayor Anderson directed that all debris be transported to Finch's site for final disposal. That's what they said in the indictment, the press conference that I was at. Derwin White's and Ashbrook's control of the debris disposal process, however, would not have been possible without their coordinating efforts with Chris Forehand and Tetra Tech. That's the company that was selected by former Lynn Haven City Manager Michael White as its FEMA monitor. Michael White has since pled guilty. Among several generic entries, the FBI listed redacted among the items it seized from GAC. All right, let's see what this footnote says. Anderson later directed the city to, okay, so this is from an indictment. This is what the FBI indicted her on. Anderson later directed the city to dispose of hurricane debris at Finch's property, and the city paid for it to be disposed there rather than on another city property nearby. At the direction of Anderson, Company C, which had been disposing the vegetative debris, chips, or other sites, stopped dumping at that site location and commenced disposing all its vegetative debris at Finch's site. Now, the Company C and D, those are Ashbrook and Crowder Gulf. All right, and then it goes, you can read that there. Let's move along here. Chris Forehand and Tetra Tech. Now, Chris Forehand, we refer to as the city engineer, but he's not employed by the city of Lynn Haven. He is contracted. His company, Panhandle Engineering, is contracted by Lynn Haven. So when we call him city engineer, understand it's not like he was hired by the city, but he was the city's go-to engineer. Chris Forehand is presumably a principal witness against Finch's purchase and sale of a motorhome to defendant Anderson's husband. Aside from the tenuous allegations surrounding the motorhome transaction, Forehand's involvement and influence permeates several other aspects of alleged honest services fraud within the city of Lynn Haven. Indeed, Forehand's reach and influence also extend to the areas of post-hurricane cleanup. The government's own reports implicate Forehand as essential to bribing the former city manager, Michael White, to award a FEMA monitoring contract to Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech's the company that certifies the stuff that's hauled away. Michael White stated, redacted. In reality, Forehand illegally caused Michael White to alter the selection committee's scoring to award a FEMA monitoring contract for personal financial gain. Again, this evidence directly contradicts the government's narrative that Anderson and Finch controlled this illegal conduct. Former city attorney Adam Albritton had stated that, redacted, but Lynn Haven did not have a contract in place for FEMA consulting and was looking to negotiate a contract for assistance with FEMA reimbursement. Michael White and Forehand wanted to, redacted, but Albritton advised him, the city attorney, that it was against federal law. After further discussion, Forehand provided Albritton with a redacted. Albritton recalled a meeting between Michael White, Jay Moody was the outside auditor for the city of Lynn Haven, and Forehand, where Michael White informed Forehand that, redacted. Forehand asked to have a private meeting with Michael White, but Albritton witnessed Michael White and Forehand engaged in a discussion about, redacted. Albritton allegedly heard Forehand say to Michael White, redacted. After their conversation, Michael White advised that Lynn Haven, redacted. Thereafter, Michael White, Kelly Battistini, and Vicky Gaynor changed their rankings so that Tetra Tech was the highest ranked and awarded the contract. Vicky Gaynor, who is Lynn Haven's current city manager after having worked with former city manager Michael White during the reign of corruption, and Kelly Battistini were on the selection committee with Michael White. They were blank that the city wanted to use Tetra Tech based on Forehand's recommendation. The committee members' score sheets reflect scores that, redacted. Now, it's important to know something. I'm going to come to you here. It's important for you to know something. Would you agree that right now is not the time to award anybody a 4-year contract? The reason I say that is tomorrow at Lynn Haven's meeting, Vicky Gaynor, who is the current city manager, they're going to vote to give her a 4-year contract. I've never heard of this before. The city manager serves at the pleasure of the 5 commissioners. But they know that there's an election coming up and the whole board may be changed. So she wants now, while they're here, to get a 4-year contract. I'm just saying, it's probably prudent, Lynn Haven commissioners, to hold off on any long-term contracts at this time. Okay? I'm usually not the careful kind of guy. I'm usually a, throw caution to the wind, shoot from the hip type of dude. But, I'm just saying, you may want to proceed with caution. You may want to take your time on this. No need to rush into anything, is what I'm trying to say. All right, let's get back to this. Unbelievable. These people are unbelievable. These people throughout Bay County, at all levels of government, elected officials, bureaucrats, the stuff they do and get away with is really, I don't even have the words for it. Back to this. In December 2018, Forehand sent a text to Albritton, the city attorney, regarding the Tetra Tech contract. Remember, Tetra Tech is the certifying company that counted the loads hauled away by during hurricane cleanup. Forehand also boasted to the city attorney that blank, Forehand blank. We're almost done with the redactions. Forehand and his partner, Jim Slonina, started Panhandle Engineering Disaster Services. Remember, Panhandle Engineering's been around, those two guys. But they started this company called PEDS. Panhandle Engineering Disaster Services, just 13 days after the hurricane. Jim Slonina, according to his FBI notes, Chris Forehand's FBI notes, Tetra Tech hired them. So Forehand recommends Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech hires the brand new company as a subcontractor to assist with their debris monitoring operations. A percentage of Tetra Tech's monitors doing work for the employees of Chris Forehand's company. They say in the motion, Forehand was financially benefiting from every aspect of post-hurricane recovery efforts. He was getting kickbacks from claims adjusters after bribing city manager Michael White. He was a subcontractor for Tetra Tech after bribing city manager Michael White. He was also working as the Lynn Haven city engineer, preparing plans and demolition documents and conducting contract negotiations and permit review. As unindicted corporate actors and individual witnesses for the government, GACs, Ashbridges, Tetra Tech's, and Forehand's conduct relates to Lynn Haven debris removal. This is all from the FBI, what the FBI told the judge, all this stuff in here. Their agreements and relationships with each other and with the government are clearly subject to discovery. What's his footnote say? Forehand has also used blank references when committing illicit activity. For instance, in December 2017, after Michael White was hired as the city manager, Forehand redacted. All right. Impermissible and unreasonable control over access and review of court-ordered discovery. Derwin White's GACs, Ashbridges, Forehands, Tetra Tech's collective conduct is truly at the heart of the issue, their collective conduct. The FBI agent's affidavit about the relationship, agreements, communications between Derwin White, GAC, and Ashbridges are inconsistent. In other words, what the FBI agent told the judge to raid GAC is inconsistent with the government's theories about Margot Anderson and James Finch. They don't jive. They don't fit. Thus, the government's former lead case agent and his sworn statements and reports are subject to discovery and rigorous cross-examination, says the defense attorney. In sum, the affidavit should have been produced over a year ago. The government is constitutionally obligated to produce to the defense information that would tend to impeach a government witness. Wow. Wow. All right, footnote. The government has previously disclosed that Borghini submitted, that's the FBI agent, submitted false testimony. The government has previously disclosed that the FBI agent submitted false testimony to at least one grand jury. In truth, the defense proved Borghini perjured himself multiple times over multiple presentations. Finding Borghini's testimony regarding FEMA funding to appear to be false, and the government knew or should have known, the government concedes that Borghini's testimony was not accurate, conceding that at least one of Borghini's grand jury exhibits contained false information. Additionally, the August 2021 GAC search warrants permitted the seizures of any and all records and documents relating to James Finch, Phoenix Construction, or entity owned by or controlled by James Finch or Phoenix Construction, as well as any and all documents relating to Ashbridge. Remember, that's the national company that was that the FBI told the judge was giving kickbacks to Derwin White. Despite the pendency of this case, the government claims that it has not completed its review of the seized documents. So the FBI and the sheriff's office, the public trust unit, they haven't completed its review of the FBI's of the search. Look, you know, just so you know, 5 years and there's statute of limitations. If they wait much longer, their friends in the community get away with it. In other words, the government has been sitting on volumes of relevant discovery for over a year and has neither produced nor offered defendants access to the material until the media discovered the unsealed pleadings, rather than owning up to its suppression and attempted cover-up. The government tries to put the toothpaste back in the tube and reseal the warrants and affidavits. Defendant Finch requested production of the warrant and the affidavit on August 26 of this year, 15 days after they were disclosed through the press. Like with previous discovery, the government offered restricted access. Of course, restricted access comes at unreasonable and unduly prejudicial cost. The government will allow access to the discovery only if defense counsel endures the cost of the and inconvenience of traveling hundreds of miles from their office during the weeks and days leading up to trial, while the defense is working hard to comply with every filing deadline as outlined by the court. If the government's army of FBI agents have yet to complete their review of the seized GAC material within a year, how is it reasonable to force the defendants to complete their review within weeks or days before the trial? The government's position is pure gamesmanship, and its offer was made in bad faith, say the defense. The search warrant affidavit was apparently sworn on August 3rd of last year and then executed on August 5th of last year. As indicated above, the unsealed warrant and affidavit received widespread media attention. The government provided neither Finch nor Anderson with any of the information regarding the warrant or critical affidavit, although apparently the affidavit was executed on August 3rd. What's really interesting is footnote 18. The search warrant affidavit was apparently sworn to on August 3rd. That is after Derwin White died. So the sheriff's public trust unit or the FBI, they were working hand in hand on this. While Derwin White was alive, they had not gotten the affidavit. They waited until he died to get the affidavit to search. All right, back to this. The government continues to withhold witness statements. Sanctions, including dismissal of the second superseding indictment with prejudice for deliberate, flagrant, repeat violations of court orders, and intentional suppression of Brady information are appropriate under the court's supervisory authority. In other words, the court can throw the whole thing out now. Okay. And then it talks about case law. The failure to produce documents and to record what had or had not been disclosed, along with the affirmative misrepresentations to the court or full compliance, support the district court's finding of flagrant prosecutorial misconduct, even if the documents themselves were not intentionally withheld from the defense. That's case law. During preparation for the November trial set for November 28, the defense team discovered several individuals were interviewed by the FBI agent, providing exculpatory testimony. The government has not produced either notes or FBI 302s of these interviews. 302s are the formal notes of the FBI interviews. Specifically, Borghini contacted and interviewed Harold Parker, a pilot who works for Finch, yet no notes or 302s were produced. Borghini also contacted and spoke with Hulon Walsingham, an employee and surveyor with Countrywide Surveying, which was hired by Lee Anderson in August 2020 to confirm the boundary lines of the Andersons' former home in Lynn Haven. Again, the government has not produced any notes or the reports of this exculpatory interview, despite the witnesses having rejected the corruption theory again suggested by the interviewing FBI agent. Wow. Additionally, following the release of the GAC search warrants, Alan Bird, I broke this story to you last month, the owner of Bird Enterprises and Land Development, filed a lawsuit against GAC. In his verified complaint seeking monetary damages and a declaratory judgment, I would say declaratory. How would you pronounce that? I'm sticking with it. Related to GAC's and Derwin White's manipulation of the post-hurricane debris disposal, Bird swears under penalty of perjury that he was interviewed twice by the FBI at the Bay County Sheriff's Office, along with Jimmy Stanford. Yet the government has not produced any witness reports or agent notes. Incredibly, the government identified Bird and other material witnesses, such as contractor Rodney Friend. Commissioner. He was a Lynn Haven commissioner, Rodney Friend, as potential witnesses. You would think. You would think that the FBI would interview everybody on the commission, and he was a commissioner at the time, as a potential witness, listing them on the no contact list. The defense is not allowed to contact these people. What purpose does it serve to include potential witness names on a no contact list, but withhold witness reports and notes against the court's orders? Think about that one. What purpose? The government's less than laudable conduct regarding discovery is flagrant. There is no justifiable excuse, says the defense. The government cannot plausibly or legally claim that it was without knowledge of these interviews. In fact, the government is deemed to have knowledge of and access to anything in the possession, custody, or control of any federal agency participating in the same investigation of the defendant. What I saw in the evidentiary hearing is that you got the sheriff's office, you've got the FBI, you've got the U.S. Attorney's Office. They were saying, well, we didn't know what they had over there at the sheriff's office, and then the FBI didn't know what was over there, and the prosecutors hadn't talked to them, and the judge said, you guys don't talk to each other? You guys don't know this stuff? Judge Walker wasn't happy with that. And case law doesn't tolerate it. A prosecutor's office cannot get around Brady by keeping itself in ignorance or by compartmentalizing information about different aspects of a case. And to the extent that any government agencies or actors, through their own flagrant misconduct, fail to make known exculpatory information, the flagrant nature of such conduct will be imputed to the prosecution team. Indeed, courts have recognized that a prosecutor's reckless disregard of Brady and other discovery obligation can constitute flagrant misconduct, particularly where, as here, the government tries to hide its mistakes and refuses to acknowledge its errors. Government's discovery violations, last page here. Government's discovery violations, misleading statements, and failure to accept responsibility for its wrongdoing constituted flagrant misconduct. Discovery violation justifies dismissal of the indictment where the government did not produce exculpatory evidence before trial and the government misrepresented the materials it had disclosed and admitted that it had not it did not keep a thorough discovery log to keep track of what had been disclosed to defendants. In other words, they can't just, according to case law, they can't just say, oops. Affirming the district court's dismissal of an indictment with prejudice, explaining that such a result was appropriately within the range of reasonable and appropriate remedies. Wherefore, defendant James Finch respectfully moves for the entry of an order requiring the government to show cause why its conduct should not be considered flagrant, bad faith, and as warranting additional sanctions, including dismissal. And additionally, compelling the disclosure of the material seized from GAC contractors and other such relief as the court deems just and proper. Whew. Can you imagine what the trial is going to look like? All right, there you have it. Bombshell. I don't think there's going to be a trial. I don't think that any of these people want to go on the witness stand. I don't think the sheriff's office or the FBI or the prosecutors ever thought that what they told the grand jury would be seen by the defendants, by the judge, by the public. But now that it has, I don't think they want to go defend it. I just don't. Would you? Could you imagine the cross-examination? I just think that the government's going to keep doing things that are subpar, reckless, haphazard until the judge throws it out. And then the sheriff's office and the FBI and the prosecutors will be able to say, that damn judge, that judge really stopped us from cleaning up this town. And then it'll be up to the public corruption team, the sheriff's office and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's office to decide whether they're going to go after the people they told the judge about that they haven't bothered with yet. Maybe they're just waiting until this is over. But the clock's ticking. The hourglass is almost empty as the statute of limitations approach. And that means a lot of people will have gotten away with a lot of money they stole from the public as they delayed the cleanup of Hurricane Michael and inflated the prices for their own benefit and cover-up. All right, that's it. Have a nice night. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. By the way, if you would like to support my efforts, here's how you can do it. And I sure could use the help if you want to become a patron. It is anonymous. It's easy, and you can quit at any time. It's like a tip every month, as little as $5 a month. I rely on crowdfunding. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. And for those of you who have become new patrons, I see you, and I'm grateful. Thank you so much for supporting my efforts to tell you the truth the best I see it. And also want to thank, as always, the Unknown Patriot for supporting the show. And I am going to jump out of here now, and I will be back. Boy, we got a lot more to tell. I'll be back with so much more. And as this stuff happens, I'll break it. And I got the time to spend with you and to read it to you and to try to break it down to you to the best of my ability. Thank you for being with me, and I will see you soon.